Hi, baddies. Welcome back to another episode of Terra's Baddies Club. I'm really excited because we're getting on a little bit of a roll right now where we are pumping out those episodes. We are getting consistent, a bit more consistent. And I want to thank everybody for listening because your listens is why I do this podcast, why I want to put out content, and every bit of support means the real to me. And if you are not on our Patreon, check out the Patreon, Terra's Baddies Club on Patreon. There's always extended content on there, always extra goodies to check out, and always putting out stuff even when I'm not putting it out publicly, because I always love to give my Patreons a little bit extra. And if you email me, you join and you're a paid Patreon member, send me a message. I'll send you some stickers in the mail. So a Patreon is such a great time. But today's episode is really cool because I get to talk to Sheryl McCollum. I met her at CrimeCon years ago in 2019 in New Orleans. We're going to talk about how we met a little bit. And then also, she seems to be the true crime hallmark reader at CrimeCon. And everybody that comes in, she greets and is just so excited to meet them. And Sheryl is just a lovely person, so I'm excited to have her on today. She is a CSI. I've always wanted to be a CSI actually and deal with blood spatter, and that's weird because I actually have issues with blood, but blood spatter to me, I'm like, okay, that's a crime scene. So I don't know if I ever want to get into CSI work anymore, but it's really cool to hear about what she does, her views about the Karen Reed case, P. Diddy, and just so you guys know, we did record this a couple months ago, so this was when the P. Diddy stuff was hot, and I'm sure there's also more movement with the Karen Reed case as well, so just know that this episode is a little bit delayed in the time. So some of the stuff we are talking about, there may be more things that came out. Like, for instance, Jay-Z, he is now on the list and there's now allegations about him. And all I can say is support survivors. It's important to listen and care about them. And I'm so excited to get into this episode with Sheryl McCollum. Let's get into it. Hi, Sheryl. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so happy to have you on because I feel like you're the first person I saw at CrimeCon, and I wasn't able to say hi to you, but I just saw your bright, shining face near the candles. And I love to hear how you are the hallmark reader for everyone at CrimeCon.
Oh, that's so sweet of you. Listen, the first time we ever met, it was 2019 in New Orleans. And you want to talk about a bright, shining, happy face. That was you. And I kept thinking to myself, what this child has been through, and to have the attitude that you do and the outlook that you do, and most importantly, how you want to use your trauma, because that's what it is, to help other people. I just find it extraordinary. I do.
Well, thank you. And for those people that don't know who you are, can you tell us a little bit about what you do and your podcast
Sure.
and everything?
Well, I am an active CSI in Metro Atlanta. That's what I do for a living. And I do have a podcast called Zone 7, and we've just started our second year. And, that's been a tremendous amount of fun for me. The reason I named it Zone 7, just so people can understand the title, when I was in Atlanta only has 6 police zones. So back in the day, before we had cell phones, before we had pagers, if we wanted to get together after work, people would say, let's 5-9 at Zone 7, which we understood to be a cop bar, Manuel's Tavern in Atlanta. So Manuel's is what we called Zone 7, which kind of turned into this place that we would go to have dinner and drinks after work. But, that's when you hear the old guard tell their stories People talk about cold cases. People talk about the scariest situations they've been in, the craziest situations, the funniest. And that's when you really start learning the job. So that's why I call it Zone 7, because the people I have on there are people that I actually know, care about, respect, have worked with, or come to know and come to respect, like you. You've been on Zone 7.
Well, thank you. And I feel like that is such a great name for a podcast, and it has such a backstory. I love it so much. It's so unique.
Thank you. But it really is. I mean, it turned out to be more of a way of life for me, because the only people I want around me are people that I trust and respect and find interesting and funny. But truly, at the end of the day, are looking out for me, whether I even know they're doing it or not. And one of the first people that I guess I really let into my Zone 7 is Nancy Grace. And a lot of people don't know that story. But when we were in our 20s, I was with the Crime Commission and I was assigned to the Major Case Division. And Nancy Grace was from the DA's office assigned as our prosecutor. So we worked together. I mean, honey, it's been a while now, but so I literally have known her, since I got out of college.
Oh, wow. Wow. Well, she actually came up the other day because I'm working on a documentary, and they were like, "Oh, we're trying to get in contact with Cheryl Grace." And I was like, "Oh, she's great to get a hold of. I have mutual friends with her." you
Sure.
know.
Sure.
And then it was this documentary that's happening, I can't give too many details. I could give you more details afterwards.
Okay.
But it's really interesting, and true crime is such a big place, and there's so many different areas. And I love that you are a CSI, you have that background and everything. But how do you feel when, like, you meet people and they have a podcast and they don't have any background about anything, and they just kind of are, say, happy about murder?
Yeah. One, those folks are very lucky because they can totally see it as entertainment. And here's the deal. I am a big believer anybody can solve a case. Anybody. And if we didn't all believe that, we wouldn't have wanted posters, right? Of course. Of course, there's the general public that can see something or understand something or put something together that everybody else has missed. You don't have to look any further than Zodiac. I mean, it was a high school teacher that broke that code at his coffee table. I mean, heck yeah. I mean, I'm all for it. So I understand whether it's murderabilia and people are making money, all serial killers and their drawings and paintings and whatnot. I understand that people would be offended by that if they've had somebody murdered by that person. I get it. It is also important that if we have these drawings and these paintings, there are people that can take those and get a lot of information from them. So I say paint on, draw, honey, write those letters, because I have experts that can tell me more about John Wayne Gacy. So if you have a painting from him and you want to put it online, groovy, I'm going to use it. So
Okay.
I think it's a two-way street all the time. I'm also a big, big, big believer in the First Amendment. You want to get a microphone and start a podcast, do it. Whether or not you're going to make money is up to the public, right?
Yeah.
But I think everybody has a gift. They do. They don't always use it for good. And I will say that. I mean, there are people that I have seen post some things and maybe say some things that are a little out of bounds that are not helping the case. They're going to hurt the case. They're certainly hurting the family. But I don't know that that was their intent. I think it's more or less they don't understand how the game is played, so to speak. But across the board, I usually champion it no matter. So that's in a nutshell. I mean, because I think there's more good that's going to come. I really do. There's always more good that's going to come with a new media, with a new invention. but there's always somebody that's going to misuse it. The cell phone, is that not the greatest thing ever? But yes, somebody's going to use it for, well, yeah, because somebody's going to use it for child porn. But somebody's also going to be able to use it to save that child, because we can find a location, we can ping, we can do things now that it's unbelievable what can be done positively. But there's always going to be somebody that's going to figure out, hey, I'm going to be a jerk, or I'm going to stalk somebody, or I'm going to, send something inappropriate. But the good far outweighs, I will tell you.
Yes, yes. Well, and I believe, I have a podcasting course. Love for you to be a part of it as well. But I have a podcasting course that teaches people to be a little bit more ethically centered or victim centric in their material, and also teaches the basics about maybe narcissism and, stuff that you could talk about, but you may not know fully, So I love to get people more information, but I truly love people just starting podcasts, creating it, and just getting out something and recording.
But again, that's you helping, because I'm telling you, I have seen people post something like on the Moscow murders. They think they're helping. They think, oh, I've got this opinion, I'm going to put it out there for God and country. They're not thinking somebody's mama that was in that house is reading that. And it's not about the victims. It's about what you think was going on the week prior. And you have no knowledge. You have no knowledge is if there's a connection between the killer and the students in that house. But you're posting, not you, I'm saying the general person, is posting something that family might go, wait a minute, are they trying to blame the victims here in some way? So I think your course is necessary, but I also think, again, it's a gift to somebody that might be starting out and they want that hook, right? They want that acknowledgement. They want people to go crazy over what they post. And we all know, for example, I could post about my anniversary last night. Oh, I might get 2 or 3 people, happy anniversary, whatever. But if I post something controversial about Karen Reed, honey, there'll be 10,000 posts, talking to me. So people know what kind of sends people out. They know that this shock value is going to give them more hits, more connects, even if it's negative. If it's everybody cussing them out, hey, it's still 5,000 hits. It's still 50,000 hits, right? And so if that's what they're after, they know how to get that.
Yeah, no, that's so true. Going back to CrimeCon and you kind of being the Hallmark reader, you've met so many people like missing, I don't want to say missing persons because they're missing, but they're the family members of the missing people, so many survivors. And when you meet them, I feel like everyone I talk to, like Sarah Turney, like if I mention your name to her, she gets excited. Kelsey German gets excited. And I love that so many survivors and co-victims, you have that effect on them. And why is that, may I ask?
Well, I don't know. I tell you, to me, you're just listing extraordinary people. There's not one person you have mentioned, and I'm going to put you in the same category, that if I sit with you and I hear your story, that it's not just mind-boggling that y'all just don't stay in the house sad and upset, but you don't. You're reaching out to people saying, hey, I heard what happened to you. This is what happened to me. This is how I can help you. So Sarah's going to help people navigate this system when the case is cold. You're going to help people navigate this system when it just happened and it's fresh and you are a part of it. Like, how do you protect yourself after that, right? Kelsey, oh my gosh, she's going to be able to help people understand this was not your fault, right? So to me, I don't know that they should see me in any way other than I'm going to support you. I'm going to help fight for you. You ain't going to fight alone, right? I'll try to stand between you and somebody that's crazy. is trying to say something, say something negative towards you, or, that would be upsetting. And that's whether it's at CrimeCon or just on the street somewhere. So I think that's something. But again, the focus, when you talk about your class, yes, there should be ethics, and yes, it should be victim centered. And I don't know that you even see, to me, how unbelievable that is, because again, you have every right to be bitter, to be upset, to blame a whole bunch of folks, but you don't do that. You sit there and go, what can I do to help not just victims, but somebody that's maybe not a victim, that has now a platform, that needs to use it for good and ethically and responsibly? Because I'm telling you, I think there's some people. There was one woman, I'll give you an example. She was so excited about her first crime con. That child showed up in this outfit with every killer you can imagine. Okay, she was excited. It never dawned on her that I could be meeting somebody who's somebody on my outfit killed their family member. Never crossed her mind. She thought she was being artistic. She thought people were going to just say, oh my gosh, this is so incredible what you've put together. Was in a way. But then when you meet the family and you've got the perpetrator on your jacket, it never crossed her mind. Once it did, honey, that never came out of her suitcase again. But that's what I'm saying. There's a learning curve. So she doesn't need to be banished. She learned something powerful. And that's great.
Yeah.
But again, in the right place, that jacket, she could have sold them.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that you say that, because one of the really big serial killers out there, Ted Bundy, and so many women look up to him, and yet Kathy Kleinher was at CrimeCon.
Correct. Yep. And that's what I'm saying. And Kathy's one of those people. She gets it. She gets that people are going to be fascinated by him. And that, to me, is why her story is so important to be told. Because look, you can be fascinated by that mind and what he did and want to study it, right? Understandable. But the bottom line is, there are people he murdered, right? And they have family and friends and fellow students and coworkers and people they went to church with. And there's much more of those people. So I think that's the kind of thing that when you're, especially in public, or especially have a platform, you just need to remember that. And look, I need reminding too. Sometimes I can get on a kick. Listen, I rarely use the word allegedly. Okay. Because in my world, I deal with facts. And if I have enough facts, then I think this happened. That's it. Amen. Well, on my podcast, sometimes my producer has to say, you might want to throw in allegedly. And I'm like, really? Pretty sure he did it, but okay. And then I just sound sarcastic because I go, allegedly, But the reality is that person has a family too. And maybe they didn't do it. Maybe, maybe the evidence looks like they possibly could have done it, but maybe they didn't. So I think both ways, we all just need to be a little, cognizant of what we're doing, because we're talking about people and their lives. Like right now, it'd be real easy for me and you to talk about Diddy and slam him for the next hour and a half. But to what good? I think it's more important that we say, hey, there's some things that look pretty bad right now. And there's now 11 women that have come forward, not 2, not 5, 11. So it's not looking like he's completely innocent in this thing. But, can you have whatever kind of sex you want to have in the privacy of your own home? If it's consensual, yes. Was it consensual? We don't know everything yet, but it's coming. It's going to be out there. And I think now that his bond has been denied a second time, I think more victims are going to come forward.
Good. Well, I don't like that he did any of that to any of the women, allegedly. But there is video evidence.
See?
There is video evidence of him beating Cassie, with the elevator footage.
Yes.
So we can definitely say that. And there's evidence of him buying 1,000 bottles of lube. Is that correct?
I know. Yeah, something. I mean, 1,000 bottles of baby oil. And you know, the thing that I found just fascinating so far, that what has come out about him is you've got 1,000 bottles of baby oil, plus lubricant, plus however many vibrators they have found. Not one condom, girl.
Well, that's kind of like the Playboy
They,
Mansion stories and stuff. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like so many girls got like infections because baby oil is also not good for that stuff. I feel like
not
he's
good.
taking like one out of someone's playbook and then
Yeah.
adapting it to himself. But that is just crazy. And what
Yep.
are the charges against him right now, just to have that information out there?
You know what? I think he's got several sexual assaults, drugs, because I think several people were slipped some type of Mickey. I think there's maybe some weapons charges. Listen, here's the thing about the feds. They can take their time. They are not going to rush to judgment. They're not going to get in a hurry. They're going to watch you. They're going to monitor you. They're going to start collecting things. By the time they show up at your house, they got you. They've got you on tape. They've got you under surveillance. And I had to guess, somebody in his entourage, maybe a bodyguard or somebody, they're going to turn state's evidence. Somebody's going to save themselves, because he did not do this alone, right? Sean Combs did not go out and buy the baby oil. He didn't go out and buy drugs. He didn't go out and get these prostitutes or sex workers or whoever was coming to the house. He didn't do that. So all the people that were doing this for him, the housekeepers that cleaned everything up and saw the evidence of everything, anybody that got a young woman that had clearly been assaulted and was bleeding and hurt and visibly injured, anybody that got her an Uber or a cab home, you're on the hook. You had knowledge and you did nothing. And there's going to be a ton of people. And if you just look at the potential witness list, J-Lo, Justin Bieber, Mary J. Blige, I mean, it goes on and on and on. 50 Cent tried to tell us. Cat Williams tried to tell us. Ice Cube is now Eminem. Ice Cube has now come out. So the witness list alone, it's going to be mind-boggling.
Wow. Well, I just remember someone playing a clip of Eminem's music, and he was talking about how you don't want to go to P. Diddy's party.
Right.
And it is interesting.
It's like, interesting. But you've got people like Ashton Kutcher. I mean, he's on video saying, oh, yeah, I can't talk about it. I can't tell that story. Can't tell this story. Can't tell that. Why can't you tell a story? What is it about the story you can't tell? It's either illegal or implicates somebody that shouldn't have been there, or somebody was doing something they shouldn't have been doing. Otherwise, you could tell it. If I told you, oh, girl, I went to a Hollywood party and there was a swimming pool filled with champagne, I want to tell that story. Why wouldn't I tell that story?
Yeah. I've heard many of those stories.
Not a good reason.
Been at those parties too.
Right.
Guys will even get people to get girls, you know, or be like, hey, can you get that girl over there? She seems interested in me. And then those people are a part of it all. You're right.
Yep. Well, you know, to me, I think so much is going to come out. There's a lot that we don't know. I think it's been a well-known secret in that community. I think there's a ton of people that knew what he was about, potentially. And again, when you start talking about a federal raid on your house, that's not searching. That's known. That wasn't a fishing expedition at all.
Yeah. And usually when the feds are on you, they have that information for a long time, right?
Yes. That's what I'm telling you. He's been under surveillance. They probably had phones and other things bugged. They probably had tags on his cars. They already know where he went and what he did. They already know. And the fact, again, that his bond has been denied twice. I think there's a lot more people that are going to come forward because they're going to feel safe for the first time. They also know that the bodyguard and some of these other people that may have been intimidating them in the past, they can't today because they're under surveillance too. I can tell you that. So nobody's going to be able to get to them and hurt them. and say, if you go to the police, I'm going to beat you up. Ain't nobody to beat you up today. So now's the time to go forward. And 11, if it turns into 27 and it turns into 36, it's just going to be a stronger case.
Yeah, no, and there's just so many women. What do you think is going to happen to him if he is convicted? Like what would he get?
Well, I mean, he potentially could get, 20 years for every charge. So it depends on how many charges they actually stack with him, but he's looking at a long time because, again, federal charges, they don't have to make a plea with you. They are not in a position to have to deal. And it depends, again, on who all flips and what stories they tell. And this thing could get broader. I would not be surprised if all of a sudden we see the IRS is going to be involved. Okay. Well, I've just never known anybody that cheats just in one area. So if you cheat getting women and you cheat whether, how you treat them, you're probably going to cheat on your taxes too. And you're going to cheat on your books, and you're going to cheat on how you, paid people for the record producing. So when they start really looking at some of this stuff, I think there's a lot of things that could potentially come out.
Yeah. Have you ever worked a case like this in where you live and gathered up all the evidence?
Well, I don't
and
do
stuff?
any federal.
Okay.
Well, not on a federal case, but on local cases, absolutely. I mean, that's what we do. So again, the feds are a little different. What they have at their disposal is completely different. So I would just be a local crime scene investigator. I don't work federal cases.
Okay. And what if you go in for your local case, say there's a SA charge on this person or SA allegations? Well, I guess it wouldn't be allegations if you're going into their house, right?
Well, it's always, you would always say alleged. I mean, you would.
Okay.
If you were talking. But if somebody calls and says they've been sexually assaulted, to me, I never work it as possibly. I work it as absolutely. And then if the evidence leads me that it might not have happened, that's completely different. But I'm going to work it as though it happened. Just like when I have a death, I'm going to work it as a murder until the evidence shows me different. So if it's natural causes, great. But we're going to start like it's the most important case we're going to have today. And if it's an accident, okay. If it's natural, okay. But until we know that, right? So like it might look like an accident when you first pull up there because there's a guy laying in the ground next to a ladder that's on the ground. Oh, well, he might have been working on the roof and this is a horrible accident. Maybe, but that's not how I'm going to start the job. I'm going to start by thinking somebody hurt this person. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, 100%. And well, it's just really interesting because every case you're going to have to go in probably different with like essay and then, murder. What do you get most of the time? Asking you this.
I mean, the biggest things we're going to get are things like entering autos and burglaries. I mean, those are going to happen every day. But you're going to occasionally have the sexual assault, the aggravated assault, the murder. But again, here's the way I look at any type of police station. There are departments that love to have like a robbery unit and a homicide unit and a sex crimes unit. That's great because you're going to have some folks that have a pretty good expertise in that area. But there's so much bleed over that those folks have got to be talking to each other because most rapists are burglars. And if you're not talking to your burglary unit and you've got a rape case that involved a yellow crowbar and they've got a guy that's been committing burglaries with a yellow crowbar for 2 years, I'd like to know that. So great, it's great to have these divisions, but it's so important they talk to each other. So for us, our CID is all one group. So you may work a carjacking today and a sexual assault tomorrow and a murder later tonight, but we're all going to work it.
Do you feel like that helps like break up things and not be so daunting all the time?
For me, yes. But again, the person that did this carjacking, could they be somebody on the run from a murder? Yes. So they're all so important. So that fingerprint, take the extra time to look for that fingerprint. Don't just go, it's a recovered stolen vehicle. Could be much more than that.
Love the effort that you do in that, because I've had instances where my friends' cars have gotten stolen and they've literally done nothing for them in that.
You've got some junior officers that may not understand crime as a whole, but rarely are these things a singular event. So you're talking about somebody that already either has the guts, the know-how, or both to steal a car. So you may say, oh, they're just 14. They're just joyriding. I can't stand that term. You have taken the second most expensive thing I will ever own, right? You've got my house and my car. You stole my car. And the fact that you might have been 14 is even more disturbing to me, because that tells me you have no respect for property. You have no respect for authority. You have no respect for your own parents. You have no respect for the police. You're just out there. So what are you going to do next? You're not going to stop. You're not just going to go to school the next day and go, gosh, I really made a mistake. I'm not going to miss Algebra 2 ever again. No. They're plotting and planning and scheming. How can I get a better car? Well, now you may need a gun, because now you want the Lamborghini and not a Toyota. Okay. Now you're talking about a different ballgame. So, I mean, to me, crime is crime is crime, and you need to stop it wherever you can and prevent it as often as you can, because it's like anything else. They're only going to increase. So whereas I can't stand the term joyriding, I can't stand the term peep and Tom. Are you kidding?
Oh my gosh.
Are you kidding me? Let me tell you what that is. That's a rapist that is scoping out a joint. That's what that is. So anytime they start to lessen the crime, just like date rape, I'm against that too. Why isn't it rape?
Yeah. No,
we don't have
crazy.
Date homicide.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and then rape is
because that would
so
be stupid.
right? Yeah. No, rape is such an interesting
we shouldn't
thing.
lessen any of it.
Yeah. No, it's so crazy. It's so, if you are dealing with the police, you notice something, how can you make sure that you're being heard in that instance, and also like give them the correct information, or give them like the information they need?
Well, I've got a couple things at my advantage. When you're the crime scene investigator, that crime scene is yours. The body belongs to the medical examiner, but that crime scene is yours. So I can keep everybody out. So once the tape is put up, only I can go in unless I say, you do a walkthrough, whatever. I am extremely fortunate with the detectives that I work with. They are hands down some of the best I've ever worked with, and I've worked with detectives across the country. But they will allow me to do a walkthrough, then they do a walkthrough using the same path, and then we talk about it. What did you see? What did I see? And are we on the same page? So if I think something looks like an accident and they think something looks like a murder, then we got to go back through, because clearly I missed something and I don't want to miss anything. So then we go back through together, and that's when they start pointing out whatever they have seen that makes them think something, violent happened. So I think that's critical. Communication is critical. The other thing is, you can't have ego in this thing. If I miss something, then dadgummit, I missed it. But fortunately, we didn't miss it forever, because you're going to go back and you're going to show me, and then we're going to photograph it, and then I'm going to collect it. So I'm not going to miss it for very long, right? But I think that's really important, to be able to say, look, I did not see that. I don't know how I didn't see it, but I didn't see it. But that's great. And vice versa needs to be able to happen too. If they just didn't see the photograph ripped up and I happened to see it, then I might say, look, why would you rip that photograph up before you accidentally fell through a glass shelf? Then let's look at it again. Let's look at it more. So it's just talking and making sure everybody's on the same page. And when it comes down to it, the evidence tells you what happened. You don't tell the evidence what happened. And sometimes people can get blinders on, which is another reason I like working with a team, because then who cares what I think? But if I've got 4 other people that say, yep, it looks like this. Yes, it looks like that. Do we have evidence to show that that's what it is? Then great. You know, it's like Karen Reed. Everybody's all up in arms about, did she do it? Did she not do it? What does the evidence prove? Because that's all you've got at the end of the day. That's it. It doesn't matter what you think. It doesn't matter what you feel. It doesn't matter what you believe, right? So you
Yeah.
can have a friend that is Catholic. You can have another friend that's Buddhist. What they believe is not the same thing at all. But at the end of the day, that's not what matters. What matters is, what can you prove? Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, no. Well, and my friend has told me a lot about the Karen Reed case, but I
Mm-hmm.
feel like hers is also a personal perspective of just like
Mm-hmm.
her own,
Yeah.
and she's telling me she's not guilty because of the evidence.
Mm-hmm.
Does that match the evidence, or?
Here's the thing. Sadly, in that case, what should have been done was not done. And some of the
Uh-huh.
things that were not done properly. So I've been very vocal in that, in this case in particular, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because they're not going to be able to prove it. The lead detective, they don't have him anymore. In what homicide case do you not have a lead detective? In what homicide case does the lead detective not go to the crime scene? There's no way the jury can accept anything without chain of custody. Well, that wasn't done here. The lead detective couldn't tell you when this was bagged and tagged, when this was taken, and where it was from. The officer that did the reenactment, he said that somebody pointed to him in the yard where the body was found. Pointed? Like in the real world, you would have markers where the body was. Here's the head, here's the elbow, here's the knee, here's the foot, etc. They didn't have that. So you don't even know for sure where the body was in the yard. So how can you prove a hit and run when you don't know if that body went 5 feet or 30 feet? You
Oh,
can't.
wow.
So again, anytime on a case, if somebody starts with, well, I think, I believe, I feel, none of that matters. None of it. All you should say is, they found blank, and it has to be a fact. They found it here, and it has to be a fact. Not, well, there was glass here and it was from a drinking glass. Did they prove that at trial? No. No. The head, was it busted in the driveway or at the scene? Depends on who you believe. But the facts have been damaged greatly.
So, aside from like the Karen Reed, what happened and everything, but just regarding the lack of evidence, do you feel that the case should be thrown now?
I don't know how ethically they can bring a murder charge. That first trial, I didn't see any evidence of a murder. Maybe leaving the scene, maybe she accidentally hit him and then left. But again, when you start charging somebody with murder, and then in the first trial, you don't prove murder at all, much less a reasonable doubt. They had nothing to prove that with malice aforethought, she ran him over with a car. They don't have it. From a parked car to knock him 30 feet, she couldn't have gone backwards far enough to hit him that hard. Like, none of it was making any sense. His cell phone was found under him. So now you want people to believe that a cell phone and a body flew the exact same distance. I don't even know if that makes sense. And then the injuries on his arms. Does it look like a dog bite? Yes, it does. But you want people to believe that a tail light broke in such a way that it would make parallel marks on an arm in 6 different locations in 4 different directions. It's not possible. I mean, it's not
That's
possible.
weird. Yeah.
And if you look at the pieces of glass, there's not one piece of glass that I've seen from the tail light that matches up with the lacerations. So in other words, there's not a piece of glass with 2 marks this size that would match the lacerations. There's not.
Yeah, well, it's interesting too because I've actually been hit by a car before too. And that car had to go at least like 20 miles maybe to like hit me. And I was lucky. I was lucky because I was also on somas during the time. So my body was relaxed.
Okay, that's good.
And
That's good.
hit the grass too. Like I flew back and I hit the grass, thank goodness. And that also helped me, but I still like flew back, but I flew back probably like 2 feet.
Where all were you hurt? Like bruises?
I was hit in the knee.
I can already stop you.
Okay.
The victim in the Karen Reed case, John had no injury to his stomach, hips, knees, thighs. Exactly. How is that possible? But had a huge laceration on the back of his head. I've never responded to a scene with a person hit by a car that didn't have injuries to their hip, thighs, or knees. Ever.
Yeah, that is so true.
Now, that doesn't mean there's not evidence that makes you say, you got to look at her. One, she was there. She didn't go into the party. So if they started drinking here and then she just drops him off, it's reasonable to think they were in some kind of fight. She calls an attorney almost immediately, I think. You know, the tail light was busted. He did have tail light at the scene. So, I mean, there's some things, you know, their relationship was volatile. They fought. Everybody has said that. But, you know, a lot of people argue. You know, I didn't see anything that showed that they were physical all the time with each other. There weren't photographs of bruises or injuries or things like that that really came out. So, again, when things are not done properly, this is sometimes what you get. And it was not, you know.
If someone, like, the only way for someone to get, like, the head injury, they would have to have either, like, get hit by the knees or something and thrown back and hit their head, or they would have to be, like, bending over and the car hit their head right there or something.
Yeah, it's in the very back. So it's like he hit the curb or something. But again, where was he hit? The only other injury he had was to his arm, which if you, let's say you're just walking down the street and a car does hit your arm, you're usually spun and then you hit the car like a deer. If you hit a deer, the back end of the deer hits your door, right?
Yeah.
This didn't happen here either. He has no other injury on him at all.
Wow.
So,
wow. Do you cover
unusual.
this case?
I mean, I covered it on a couple of different, I think Nancy Grace did a couple of shows and things like that. But again, the reason this case is such a hot button is because they did not do it the right way, the right time. They just didn't. I mean, the first day that it happened, the lead detective doesn't even go to the scene. I've never heard of that in my entire career. I've never heard that in my entire career. So, very odd. He claims he doesn't know the people, then it came out that he did know them. Again, he should have gone to the scene. He should have worked it like a homicide. He thought at first that John had gotten beat up. And, you know, there's all these things that you would think would be true. Like if there was somebody dead on the front yard of most people, if they didn't even know the person, would come outside and go, what in the world happened? What can I do? Well, the people in that house that actually knew John never came outside. And then to find out one of them is a police officer is shocking, to say the least. I don't know a police officer that wouldn't have been outside with a stranger, much less somebody they know. So there's a lot about this that just does not add up. And then did the dog bite him? I don't know. But they ended up giving the dog away. Well, that's weird. The whole thing is weird. I know.
What kind of dog was it?
I don't remember if it was a German Shepherd. I don't remember. I'm not sure.
Okay.
It was a big dog. I just don't remember.
I'm like, I've been bit by a German Shepherd.
Right.
I could show you those lacerations.
Well, you should be somebody that should look at his arm because you might go, yeah, that kind of looks like a dog bite. You know,
okay.
And listen, the arm, he's clearly injured. in some way. So whether the tail light and the glass did it or the dog did it, one thing that makes it look like it was the car is there was no, dog DNA. But he was possibly bit through a shirt, so that could explain it. I don't know. There was also no glass in his injuries, and I don't know how that would be possible. There should be some glass in his wounds on his arm.
Was the body moved, in your opinion?
We don't know. Because remember, well,
yeah,
it does not seem like he was hit by a car to me, if they're telling me that's how he landed and that's how far he landed. If you stop and let somebody out and they walk behind your car to go into a house, I don't know how you get enough speed going to even break a tail light on a person. That takes a little bit of power to bust a tail light. That's not thin glass, right? So I don't know. There's just a lot of things that don't, to me, add up, and they certainly don't add up to murder.
Wow. I have to go look into more of this case now. I have to go look into your Nancy Grace episode and everything. So I'm mind blown. But what are some things you could do if you're a civilian going through an instance where you're now, you come outside and you see the body and stuff? And what do you do if you're a civilian in that case?
Don't go near it and call the police.
Okay.
Period.
Like you wouldn't
the only
go
thing,
check
if
for
you
a
thought
pulse?
there was a chance, well, I was going to say, if you thought there was a chance of life-saving measures, absolutely. But if you thought, oh, this looks bad, you don't see any movement of the chest or anything, I would caution, if you are going to go look for life-saving measures, to pay attention. Do you see any footsteps already toward them, any tracks? Because here we had snow. So was anybody already around this body? If you don't see any of that, just make note of it. And then, do whatever you can if you can do life-saving measures. But if not, I would get law enforcement there as quick as possible. Okay.
Wow. Well, this is I just don't even have the words for murder. Like it's so it's a lot to go through and a lot to even like have that job and see these things every day. And I'm just so thankful for your information, for your expertise. So I want to thank you for that. And I want to ask you more questions, but I want to end it right here for the people that are not on the Patreon and ask you where we can find you on social media, everything.
You can find me at Sheryl McCollum, and that's Sheryl with an S, or you can find me at the Cold Case Investigative Research Institute, but we're on all social media platforms.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And continue on to the Patreon. Thank you for listening to today's episode with Sheryl McCollum. If you guys want more content, there is always more content on the Patreon and extended versions of the episode. You can always check out my episode with Sheryl McCollum on Zone 7. It's a great interview. It's actually the last time that I talk about my attack on a podcast. So check it out. She is a great person, and really joining the Patreon helps support the podcast, helps me pay for Riverside, helps me pay for all the good stuff that comes with podcasting and the expenses. So if you are a Patreon member, thank you so much. If you want stickers, hit me up on Patreon. Text me, send me a message and say, hey, I joined the Patreon member. I'm a paid Patreon and I would love some stickers, and I'll send those your way. So until next time, I'm Terra Newell, and thank you for listening to Terra's Baddies Club.